engine room today. I'm going to give you a quick tour about what is in our engine room. It's pretty typical of a Northern Marine. This is my third Northern Marine, so I've spent a fair bit of time in 3 different engine rooms. The first one I got to design and they built it, which was great. I picked everything in it. The other 2 are designed by other people, but they're all pretty much the same. They have different brands and that kind of thing, but things are in the same place. There's one main engine. This one happens to be a Volvo. The first one was a Cat. The second one was a John Deere. You turn them on, they go, they make noise, water comes out the back, it's all good. I'm going to give you a quick tour today just about showing you the major components, kind of where they are, and I'll talk a little bit about how they work. One of the common features in every boat is a fuel tank. Well, these boats typically have 3, 4 or 5 tanks, depending on kind of the configuration of your boat. In this boat, there's a tank in the bow, there are 2 saddle tanks, and there's a day tank. So the day tank is gravity fed by the saddle tanks, and in order to move things from the bow tank to the saddle tanks, we have to use the fuel transfer system. So basically there's this manifold up here, and it might look complicated at first, but it's really simple. This line of valves here are where the fuel will come from, and this line of valves up here show where the fuel is going to go to. So if I wanted to take fuel from the bow and put it in the port saddle tank, I just turn this guy on, turn that guy on, open up the valve, and then turn on the pump, and away it goes. One pro tip is set a timer so you remember to turn off the pump. It's easy to get distracted. You're going to run it for 5 or 10 minutes. You kind of wander off and do something, and before you know it, you maybe transferred more fuel than you wanted to. Yeah, I know I'm wearing a t-shirt from a sailboat. Sailboats are our friends. We must, always keep that in mind. Seriously, if you haven't seen Gone with the Wind, it's an awesome channel. Go check it out. So one feature that all these boats have are generators. Most boats have 2 generators, some have 3. In this case, we have 2. The forward generator is a 12 kilowatt Northern Lights. Its main job is to provide electricity when it's on. The aft one is a 25 kilowatt Northern Lights and has 2 jobs. One is electricity and the other is hydraulics. You get the hydraulic pump right there. It gives you the ability to add some more power to the hydraulic system. Generators are here along the port side. They're nicely installed. They're all in their own sound shields. You pop that open to check the oil and fluids and such, and belts. And I've had Bonians, I've had Northern Lights. They're all really solid brands, and they do the trick. So one of the other features that's really common to the Northern Marine engine rooms is a workspace. So this one has a nice little table and 2 Craftsman drawers below. It gives you a lot of space to store all your tools. I've seen some of the workspaces in different boats have a sink and other amenities, but it's a great spot because this is where I keep pretty much all the tools that I use on a regular basis, and also it's always cluttered with my current project. Like for example, I'm working on the dock and put in a new power receptacle when I get back. People have different ways to keep notes. These are my messy notes. This is kind of my go-to board, or when I'm taking notes or some kind of random thing. They're really handy to have. Having a little whiteboard is a nice thing. Some people just write on the wall. You can do that too, but I don't want to do the whiteboard. This is the engine control panel here. Pretty straightforward. Got all the bilge controls. This is where we start the generators and stop the generators. This is where we can start and stop the engine. There's a Maritron display here that we can use for pretty much whatever you have on your NEMA 2000 system. You can display it there. Right now we have the levels in the fuel tanks. Well, it wouldn't be an engine room without a giant engine. And in this case, it's a Volvo D9. This is one of the things that I don't spend a lot of time on. It works. Make sure the oil gets changed when it needs to. The filters, fuel filters get changed when they need to. Zincs, all the maintenance that needs to happen. But anything bigger, I let the pros do that. It starts when it should and does what, engines are supposed to do. I don't really have many more requirements other than that. It's housed on the center line of the boat since we only have one engine. And the exhaust system is a combination of wet-dry exhaust that goes out the corner. If you have questions about the engine, put them in the comments. I'll answer them there. So we have a few things going on over here. The big contraption that you see is the chiller. It's the air conditioner. It's essentially a giant heat pump. So there's a loop that goes from the ocean and back out to the ocean, which provides the cooling. And that goes through this contraption, which keeps everything nice and cold as the compressor cools down the inner loop, which is the loop that circulates between the air handlers. So that loop circulates all through the boat, cold water all through the boat, and it goes through an air handler that blows air across the radiators, and voila, you have air conditioning. We have a heater in the lazarette that essentially does the same thing, but for heat. These are the variable speed drives. These two are for the fans. We have 2 large fans right there. It gets really warm in here when you're running the boat, so we blow a lot of air through here. Basically, we pressurize this room with the air from outside, and then it naturally goes out the other side of the boat. This last frequency drive is for the compressor on the chiller. Other than that, I have a camera, which is actually kind of nice to have when you're up in the pilot house. You know, if something is being finicky, you can point the camera at a gauge and watch it from the pilot house as you're going, so you can kind of keep an eye on it between engine room checks. It's very handy. So down below we have 2 pumps. The big green one you see is just a beast of a pump. It's a diaphragm pump. I don't know what the gallon per minute on that, but it's pretty impressive, and also it can run dry and it can deal with solids. You know, it's our black water pump. It can also be used as an emergency dewatering pump, so that's pretty valuable. Behind it is a smaller pump called T-Series pump, and we use that to pump out the gray water. All the engines here need cold water. So this is a sea chest. So water comes in through this. It's nice because it's a single spot where all the water comes in that is used by the various systems. There's a problem. There's that blue lever on the left there that we can use to close down the whole boat. Hose broke or something like that. If for some reason there wasn't another valve that we could turn off to stop the flood, we can turn the whole system off. And also sometimes you need to work on a valve, so you can turn off the butterfly valve there and safely do that. Along with the supply chest, there's also a dump chest. That's over there in the corner under the fire extinguisher. The dump chest is basically just the one place where all of the wastewater from the engine room gets dumped back into the ocean. Alrighty, over in this corner, what we have are 2 interesting systems, one for oil and one for fuel. The oil system is a oil changing system. Every engine in here that uses oil is plumbed to the system that allows us to drain it directly into a storage tank, and then out of a clean tank, pump fresh oil into the engine. In practice, I only use it to empty the engine. You know, it's really super convenient. You run the engine, get it warmed up, open the valve, suck all the oil out, you know, after you've turned off the engine, of course, and it puts it into the tank, which is great. And then I pour in by hand fresh oil. That way I can measure more accurately how much oil I'm putting in. But, you know, some people will actually use this to pump the fresh oil into the tank as well. And, you know, just kind of watch the dipstick as you fill it up and stop when you're full. You know, that works too. The other system is for fuel. So this boat takes 2,800 gallons of fuel, and that means we don't use it all right away. The fuel could be on the boat for a long time. In fact, we filled this boat up in November of last year, and right now it is August. So we probably still have about half a boat full of fuel. So we need to make sure that we maintain that fuel so bugs don't grow in it, and, you know, whatever contaminants that may have been in the fuel when we got it are taken care of. And that's what this polisher does. Basically, it's a filter that you run fuel through, and you can use the polishing system, you know, when you transfer fuel, like I talked about before. Instead of using the transfer pump, you can use the polishing pump to move it over, and you know, that will accomplish the goal there. Or what I do is I will just, it has a nifty little timer up there. I'll just set it for an hour or 2 on a tank and let it recirculate the tank and clean the diesel in place. It's pretty nifty. It's easy to use. Just change filters every now and then, keep the impeller good, and it's a lovely system. All right, we got the hydraulics here. I talked about the hydraulics briefly in our docking video. The hydraulic system is great in this boat. It's really easy to use, easy to maintain. My hand right here is on the reservoir of hydraulic oil, and then we have two pumps on the main engine and the big generator that move the oil around, and then the motors, depending on which direction the oil is going, the motors will go one way or go the other way. It's a really easy system to maintain. It's there's a raw water cooling system, so you got to make sure that pump is good, and the strainer and the impeller are good. But other than that, it pretty much takes care of itself. This runs the stabilizers, the two thrusters, the bow and stern thruster, the windlass, and the crane. So it's a pretty important part of the boat. Oh yes, it also runs the take-home drive, which it's hard to see right now, but it's tucked down under there. If for some reason the main engine stops running, we can run the big generator, turn on the hydraulic pump, turn on the get-home drive, and then we can drive the boat with that. We can turn the shaft and move the boat forward, at a slower speed, but we can get home, under a few knots of power, versus zero power. So that's a really nice system to have. Some boats have wing engines, so that's a kind of a cool thing too. On one hand, they're better because there are no redundant parts, I guess, other than the fuel system. You have your own separate shaft, your own separate propeller, and all that kind of stuff. So that's nice. The downside is get another engine. Engine rooms are only so big, so you're dedicating a pretty big amount of space to another engine, and that means more maintenance on that engine as well. So there are kind of pros and cons to each system. I like this one. It's simple. It works when it needs to. I've never ever had to use the get home drive, but I test it from time to time, and it seems pretty straightforward. So I'm a fan. Well, that's about it. That's the very quick tour through the engine room. I know it was brief. Basically, I just wanted to give you an overview of what's here, kind of touch on every system, very briefly. If there's something you'd like to see me go into a greater amount of detail in, let me know. Put some comments in the comment section down below. Yes, I even will talk about the main engine if people really want that. Other than that, thanks for joining us. I'll see you next time.